Hello, Melanie. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me, to Rushana's Mindset Lab podcast. And I'm so happy that you agreed and found time for our conversation.
Always a pleasure, Rushana. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you, Melanie. So Melanie and I worked together on Help to Grow programs at Aston University. And Melanie, I was always fascinated by your energy and positive attitude and, your skills with networking and, people's person skills kind of thing. And I always wanted to talk to you about your journey and your experience of being in business and being facilitator and mentor for other businesses. So may I start by asking you to tell us about your business journey? I mean, perhaps you can start by telling what you're doing at the moment and then how you arrived here.
Okay, so I definitely did not take the conventional route, that's for sure. So in terms of what I'm doing now, I'm a growth expert. So I work on several funded programs and have done for the last 12 years. So that will be things like Help to Grow Management, which is where we met. I'm also a growth expert on the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program and several other ones. I also write bids, so for public sector tenders and grant applications for both businesses, charities and social enterprises. And in terms of those, I think I've won now over 172 million in the last 12 years.
Wow.
I know, it's an incredible figure. And just think about all those businesses, charities and social enterprises and what they've been able to do with that kind of income. So that's what I do now, but that's definitely not where I started out. So I know that when we've talked, I think you've already asked me in the past about my family, but I am actually the only entrepreneur in my family. So my dad was a civil servant. He was head of the forensic science laboratories for the Northwest. I rose to that level. My mum was a stay-at-home mum, but I think that does her an injustice because she's also, president of societies, treasurers of societies, not lifelong volunteer, just comes from a different generation where when you started, when you got married, you weren't actually allowed to work. I know, incredible for us to think she's 83 and when she got married at the age of 20, she was no longer allowed to work because she was a married woman. I know how times change. So in a world of where we're always told to specialize, when I was growing up, had no idea what I wanted to do. I still say I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up. I still say that. I still think it's true. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. And so when I left school, I could have gone to university. I chose not to. That did really upset my dad, who has a big thing about education, and quite understandably so. But there was nothing I wanted to study. And I couldn't imagine spending 3 years studying something that I wasn't particularly interested in and where I had no idea what I was going to do with it afterwards. And that's also because of this generalist. I'm curious about everything and anything. So I build breadth and depth of understanding and knowledge, but there's nothing where I go, that's the one thing that I want to do forever and ever and ever. Because I'm just kind of got in my mindset, I'm off to the next new shiny thing. I'm curious all the time, and passionately curious is what I would describe myself in that respect. So I started life in banking, and that was only because it was the first job I got offered. So I worked in NatWest for a while. I was then very cheeky, and I applied for a job with Gyrobank to set up and head their civil litigation department. And I had a wonderful boss there who he was an ex-prison governor, and he saw the potential. I turned up for the interview, could answer all his questions about how to sue in the county court. He told me he didn't believe I'd ever done it. I told him he was 100% right. He asked me how did I know, and I drew out of my handbag How to Sue in the County Court book.
Oh my goodness.
And he went, okay, you've got the job. However, not on the grade I was offering it at, not on the salary I was offering it at, because you're over 10 years younger than I was expecting, and you haven't actually got the experience. But he trusted me, and I went ahead and I actually did that. I set up the civil litigation department for Gyrobank. And you can imagine, the reaction to the courts when I used to turn up on behalf of Gyrobank at the age of 22 and say, hi, yes, that's me. I'm the representative of Gyrobank in the courts. But it was a huge learning ground. So I actually stayed with Gyrobank for over 10 years, but I went on to do lots of other projects like that and ended up being a senior manager within their internal consultancy. And from there, I got poached by one of the big external consultancies that I was working with on a project, which was Capgemini. Had a wonderful time working with them, and then that satisfied my curiosity because I got to see lots of new people. I was with a new client every 6 to 12 weeks. I would fly in, I would have to get it all sorted, then I'd fly out and leave it for someone else to implement. So you've got to be good, because if you're not, you will be found out very quickly, because the implementation team will be there for a long time and will find any flaws in what you do. So you have to be able to think on your feet a lot. So
No pressure.
No pressure, no. So the whole thing about assimilating lots of information played entirely to my strengths, And what I didn't realize was that what my big strength was the ability to join dots. So I see one thing in one context, and I know how to twist it, turn it, add things and subtract things and make it work in another context. So when I had some analysis work done as part of one of these wonderful, assessment centers that you do for various roles, I was told that I'm a pattern recognizer. And I'm like, now I have a label for it. I'm a pattern recognizer.
How wonderful.
I know, it did make me smile, because it's like, well, that is my greatest strength. But joining dots in situations like that also means I join dots with people. So I meet people. You talked about networking. I meet people. I am incessantly fascinated by people. Everybody is different. Everybody has such amazing life stories. When you scrape a little bit underneath the surface, no one's quite what they seem, perhaps, on the surface. But I join the dots there as well. So I'll see two individuals and I'll think they should talk, even if I can't quite articulate why they should talk. I know that they should, and I'll connect them. And then later on, I'll find out that they've gone on to do something amazing together.
How fantastic. Yeah. And it's I think another perhaps positive label is connector, isn't it? When you know a lot of people and you're able to exactly bring 2 or 3 of them together to work on their strengths. Wonderful.
No, absolutely. And so 12 years ago, I was working for a boutique consultancy, and we hit the big recession. Those of you on this session who are old enough to remember it will know what I'm talking about. 2008, it was pretty hideous. And at that time, 70,000 management consultants were actually made redundant in the space of a very short period of time. And it wasn't a case of anyone whether you were good or not good. It was actually a case of how the projects fell. And I finished a project and I was made redundant. And it was like, wow, really? Oh gosh, right, okay. But to be fair, the majority of my organisation, the whole of the UK, was actually shut down. So that was it. We all went pretty much over a period of just a couple of months. So I didn't know what to do, because I've never, I know it sounds really crazy, but apart from the first couple of jobs with NatWest and then Gyrobank, I've never looked for a job. I've just met somebody who liked me and offered me a job, and I've gone, fine, I'll take that. Yeah, sure. And then you get a reputation, and then headhunters start calling you and saying, are you interested? And you go, well, actually, yeah, maybe. And you take the job. So for the first time, I've got this horrible perfect storm where you've got a big recession, people shedding jobs. I would ring people and say, hi, I'm looking for, I might be interested in your job. They say, oh, fantastic, come and have coffee with me next week. And then they ring me the day before and say, we've just been put on a recruitment freeze, and actually my job's now being made redundant as well.
Oh, wow.
I know. So I had a terrible time, and I was applying for everything and anything, and I was either too qualified, too experienced, not qualified enough, not experienced enough, didn't seem to matter. And I would get to the last 2 in every job, and then they would withdraw the job because, again, their rules would change. And my husband, bless him, is originally from Jamaica, doesn't do stress, I do it all for him, and said he was fed up of it. He was fed up of me being on the computer at 5 in the morning looking, fed up of me still being on the computer at midnight still looking, and asked me how long could we live if you just stopped. That's because I'm also a control freak, so I do all the finances too. So I told him 3 months, which wasn't quite true, but he doesn't need to know. So we're still not telling him, he won't listen to this, it'll be fine. So he asked me to stop. Now, here's the thing. I've never stopped since I was 14. So I've worked since I was 14, part-time jobs while I was in, obviously in school. I don't know how to stop. So I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I immediately started looking online to what could I do. I had a very bad conversation with the job centre, which didn't go well at all. So they didn't even have management consultant on their list of jobs. They didn't know what it was. They were asking me, was I a trainer or was I a surgeon? Because I'm a consultant. Wow. I'm like, neither. Consultant didn't exist in 2008, according to the job centre.
Okay.
So I started going to small business networking events because I'd never heard of these, but it looked like there were lots of them, and they were sort of like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was a cup of tea and a nice bacon sandwich or breakfast sandwich, and I would think, okay, I can do that. And I would turn up, and they would say to me, "What do you do?" And I'd say, "I have no idea anymore." Truth, no idea. However, I say, "What do you do?" And I can't resist interfering. I'm a consultant, so I would be giving them ideas and opportunities and talking to them about things. And before I knew it, people were saying, "Could you just do this for me? Could you just do that for me?" And at the same time, I was volunteering, and I'd be doing things like folding clothes, in a shop, or I'd be doing something else. I'd be going, "Where does your funding come from? Have you thought about?" And found the same thing. So before I knew it, I was getting paid for what I call interfering. I was getting paid, and I still didn't admit I had a business. And it actually took me 3 years to admit that I was no longer looking for a job. Wow. So I am the original accidental entrepreneur.
How wonderful. Wow. It's so many inspiring things and a lot of permission in that, to take your time, to just play on your strengths and go with the flow. Fantastic. Can I just ask you, so when you went and started networking, I think a lot of, beginning entrepreneurs or just anyone who is interested, they'd be like, "Oh, I need to network to then get a business out of it." Did you have that at the back of your mind, or not at all?
Not at all. And I think that's actually why I was so successful.
Right.
My observation is that I was entering rooms full of people who were trying to sell to me.
Oh, yeah.
And that to me is not networking, that's selling, and it's different. But also, to me, that's the equivalent of going and knocking on everybody's doors, because you don't know anything about the person or their business or what they do. And yet you're instantly trying to sell them something.
Cold calling.
Yeah, it is. It's cold calling. So, and that to me is not what networking is actually about. Networking is about getting to know people and looking at how you can help them, which includes doing things like making connections, sharing great articles you think they would be interested in, sending them things that might be of use to them. It's not actually about offering your services. And I think that my only objective when I went originally was just to understand what small businesses did, because I'd come from the big corporate world. So I'd worked with household names across the world. I didn't really know much about small businesses, but I learned very quickly. And also to get to know people and understand I'm always interested in people, so understanding what made them tick. And if you do that and you start to connect those dots for them, both in terms of what they do in information and what might be useful to them, but also in terms of people, because I would say, "Oh, I spoke to so-and-so last week. Look, he's over there. You need to talk to him." And I'd take them and introduce them. And they would never have had a conversation because they've both been too busy trying to sell to each other. Therefore, they'd never had a conversation. Therefore, they'd never found out the one thing that would actually allow them to do business together.
Of course.
In that respect. So to me, it's not about selling. And people who go into any networking session trying to sell are not doing it right. And then people say to me, "Oh, but that's the business justification for being there." And I say, well, maybe if you try just being curious, maybe if you just try to help people, you would actually find that they would naturally get to know you. And then when they are in a conversation or a situation where they can recommend your services, they probably will.
This is wonderful. This is so refreshing, and I think really practical and useful tip for anyone going to those networking events. Yeah, this is fantastic.
Well, and it definitely works. The call I had before you this morning was with a charity based in Liverpool. And I asked them, where did you get my name from? And they said the Lloyd's Foundation. And I thought, how? I've written grant applications for other charities for the Lloyd's Foundation, but they wouldn't know that. And I know what the answer is. I don't know who it is, but the answer will be that because I'm generous with my time and my knowledge and my experience and my contacts, somebody somewhere has linked the dots, and Lloyd's has been talking to Lloyd's about, who's a good charity bid writer, and has said, oh, Melanie is a really good charity bid writer because of X, Y, and Z. I will probably never know who made that connection, but somebody must have done, because Lloyd's don't know me. And yet they recommended me, and they had my name, my email address, and my telephone number. A bit scary, really, isn't it? There you go. But it's a great example, isn't it, of networking in action. Somebody has joined the dots for me.
Oh, this is fantastic. Melanie, now you talked about volunteering in shops and how you started being interested in writing those bids. How was your first ever bid application experience for you?
It was fun. It was really interesting. I found a contract with Nesta, which, as you might know, is an innovative organisation based in the UK. And Nesta was looking at running workshops in schools to help young people with lots of different things. I coincidentally had been having conversations with several different organisations that delivered into schools. And one of the areas that Nesta was going to focus on was Greater Manchester, which is where I live. Mm-hmm. And as part of this programme, they would be offering these workshops free to schools. So it was relatively obvious to me that the schools were going to take the free workshops, not least of which because Nesta would have a great publicity machine that would go behind it and make sure that they all knew about the free workshops that were on offer. None of the people I'd been talking to had even seen that tender come out. They hadn't seen it. So unbeknownst to them, their market was about to be wiped out for a period of at least 2 years, because who would pay them if they could get workshops like them free via Nesta? So it was just before Christmas, because these things always hit at the wrong time. So I rang round to these charities and social enterprises and said to them, are you aware of this? No. Would you like to bid for it? Well, yes, but we don't know how to. Can I bid it in your name? No, because we can't get our trustees together before Christmas, etc., etc. So I took a big risk. I got agreement that they would all come into a consortium with me. I bid it in my company name, despite having no track record of ever having delivered a single workshop into a single school, ever. But with all these great organisations behind me, we won that contract.
Oh.
Yeah, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the time, because it was like, oh dear, I've taken on all this risk because I am now responsible for delivering all of this, despite the fact that I actually don't. Fortunately, they all obviously did their piece, with one exception. One person was sick one day, and I had to call on my best friend, who's wonderful with textiles and things, because we had to go in and run a design your own t-shirt workshop in a school with 14-year-old girls. And it was like, that is super scary if you've never done anything like that before. And I am really not that creative. But luckily he could take a day off and come with me and do it. And we did it. But that was the only glitch. But they got 2 years of work out of that, with guaranteed income, because Nesta was paying them obviously for the work that they did. Nesta promoting their services, which got them into new clients that they didn't know before. And by the time that ended, several of those had gone on to be incredibly successful, at least partly due to the contacts that they made during that particular contract, that none of them would have bid, because none of them had seen it. None of them would have thought of working together, which is what they needed to do to actually win it. And it could have been very, very different for them, with them watching, a great deal of their income wiped out. So that was the first one, which was pretty scary.
And where did you get the courage from to actually go and do it?
I think on that one, it's more comes into the I'm quite, sort of like a social justice type person. And when I looked at it, I was really aggrieved that these great organisations would potentially no longer exist because they were about to lose their income without realising it. So I didn't do it for me, I did it for them. And I think that's where the courage comes from. I am a great champion of other people, because that's easy. It's far harder to champion yourself. Yeah. So I could talk ad nauseum about how wonderful they were and what a great job they did. And I could write the bit. I knew what was being looked for and I knew how to respond to it. So, you know, and they had the trust in me because they were doing this, as I say, over the Christmas period when there was nobody in their organized, none of their trustees were available to really have those. You know, they couldn't call an emergency board meeting. It wasn't going to happen. They were all on holiday. So, yeah, I think it's that, because it was for somebody else, not me, in that particular instance.
Wonderful, and so meaningful too. And now, Melanie, if you know, we take maybe a little bit fast forward, and when it comes to marketing yourself and your service, your company, you work with, now your name is really well known, you work with these fantastic organizations and businesses. How does that feel when you're having to market yourself? I mean, do you do any marketing?
I don't do marketing in the conventional sense.
Okay.
So you and I have sat through several marketing modules and we know how to market, but I don't actually do that, and I never have. And I think marketing is different for different types of organizations as well. So I have never, for example, advertised. All my work comes through word of mouth and personal recommendation. What I did do was build my profile. I don't think, if I'm very honest about it, I sat down and very intentionally decided to build my profile. But I realized relatively early on that that was going to be the way in which I would generate work, would be by doing that rather than by looking at advertising. If you think about it, when I first thought about setting up a website, the search engine optimization terms that I would have used were used by very large global organizations. I wouldn't have even ended up on page 4 of Google, never mind on a search engine optimization, never mind anywhere else. I can't compete with what they're, you know, with what they're looking for. I can't, you know, universities would outstrip me by a mile, wouldn't they, in terms of growth programs and things like that. I was never going to be able to compete on that kind of a basis. But raising your profile and getting known as being somebody who's knowledgeable, experienced, but very helpful, for me was the way to go. I can't say that I think I did it intentionally. I think it's more about being part of my personality than anything else. As I said, I can't resist interfering. I'm incessantly curious about people. So I spot things and I send it to people. I comment on what they're doing. I'm genuinely, and I do mean genuinely, delighted when people do well. I don't think it's a case that they do well and that then excludes me. I think we all do better when we all actually cheerlead each other. There's room for us all. It's not difficult, is it? There is actually room for us all. I do put out what I think and like to think is good and useful content. People tell me it is in that respect. So that helps too, I think. Social proof definitely works for me because people recommend you, and that's what's important. The whole trust angle is important. So I think raising a profile, and there were things that I did that I didn't set out to raise my profile by doing, but that did do it for me. So again, many years ago, I was really frustrated, having come out of the corporate world, looking at, in that time, what was available for women in business. It was really patronizing. It was very low level. It was primarily delivered by men. And I was rather surprised at this. And I wanted to change it. So Global Entrepreneurship Week, I can't even say that, Global Entrepreneurship Week was coming up. And I was in a room full of women and I said, what are we going to do for Global Entrepreneurship Week? And they said, oh, we're going to do these little coffee mornings, we might get a speaker in. And I said, well, why don't we just do one big event? Get about 300 women there. Get women to deliver it all, so that it's all the workshops are run by amazing women. So we're showcasing amazing women from across this. I said, we could do it. And they said, how are you going to fund it? I said, we can get sponsorship. Surely we can get, I've just come out of the corporate world, remember? Surely we can get sponsorship. It won't be a problem, says me. And they looked at me and went, no. I went, oh. So we're happier with nice, cozy coffee mornings with a speaker on the best colour to wear for your business, which there's nothing wrong with, I hasten to add, but it just seemed like to me like a very, very lost opportunity. So I did it anyway. So I started the Northwest Women's Enterprise Day. I did get 300 women, ran it for 7 years. It was run entirely by volunteers. for women volunteers, for other women. I got amazing women to come and do workshops. Didn't matter if you were a startup or you were somebody very senior, there was workshops for you. You created your own day. I did get the sponsorship from local organisations, including people like NatWest, Manchester Metropolitan University, big law firms, accounting firms. They were interested, and they enjoyed it so much that they came back year after year. So by doing that, and I didn't set out, that was not about me making a name for myself. It was never about me. It was about wanting women to have what they deserved, what we deserve, rather than not. But 300 women, 7 years, my name got pretty well known quite quickly.
Definitely, yes. And this is so meaningful. And I remember you mentioned once that is that a vision or like a mission statement? Is it changing the world?
I want to make a positive difference with over 10,000 small businesses, charities and social enterprises by helping them to grow. Yeah. So
and there was something around changing the world one entrepreneur at a time, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something like this.
I talk about the fact that I don't think that I will ever be the person who has the one big idea that's going to change the world. You know, I'm not going to invent graphene or a great new medical device or whatever. However, what I'm really good at is helping others to do that.
Yeah.
So if you have your idea, I can help you to bring that idea to reality, and I can help you to bring it to more people faster, better, more effectively, more efficiently, and to scale up and grow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be the person who will have that initial, I have lots and lots of ideas, but mainly for other people. So that's where I come, but I will change the world, and I do change the world one entrepreneur or one social entrepreneur at a time, you know. And I think that it's finding where you fit, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that respect, because people think of me as an ideas person. I have loads of ideas about how to run your business, not a problem. However, inventing graphene, that's not going to be me. Never going to be me.
Fair enough. And Melanie, what about money? So as you were working on this fantastic event, really helping, contributing to changing life and businesses, all these 300 amazing women entrepreneurs, I mean, did you ever think of, okay, what am I making out of it? Because as an entrepreneur, your activities actually paying the bills, essentially, right? How did that work out for you?
On the Women's Enterprise Day, the answer to what I made financially out of it was absolutely nothing, because it was a not-for-profit day and I positioned it exactly as that, run by volunteers for women. So it was not one penny. Every penny was just literally about paying for the venue. Amazing refreshments, because you've got 300 women. My top tip is you have to have amazing refreshments.
Thank you. That's nice.
You will be judged on the venue and the refreshments and the toilets, regardless of anything else. Okay. So not a penny was the answer to that, but that wasn't why I did that, and it never was. It was always about, if we're going to be honest about it, proving that I could up front, because I was told it wouldn't happen, and I just knew instinctively it was what people wanted at that time. So it wasn't about that. Where I've always found it hard, and I don't find it hard finding money for you. And that's why I'm great at doing public sector tenders, and I'm great at doing charity grant applications and business grant applications, because it's not for me, it's for you. I can do that without any problem. I could sell you to the cows come home, not a problem. Where I found it harder was me. And it was partly because I've come out of the corporate world where I had a salary. That salary was paid every month. Yes, I had to do a lot for it, and yes, it could disappear, but it was paid every month. There was a lot of certainty. I could budget. I could do all of those things that, you know, that you would expect to do. And all of a sudden that wasn't there anymore. And that was made doubly more scary for me, because my husband is also self-employed.
Okay.
So it was like, hang on a minute. I never bothered about what he did in the nicest possible way, because my salary would cover all the bills, if that makes sense. And all of a sudden, no regular salary coming into the household, bills still to pay. That for me is really, really scary. Really, really scary. And I know that's a lot about your upbringing and everything else. I was always taught to save for everything that I wanted, not to be in debt, to, you know, that you've got to think about the future, you've got to save for the future. And yes, that stood me in very good stead when I was made redundant, because I actually did have savings. I had taken that on board. So that was useful. But it doesn't stand you in quite such good stead when you're trying to build a business.
Mm.
So I'm well aware that in the beginning I undercharged. I did, undoubtedly. And that was really brought home to me, because at one point I put my prices up by a third and didn't lose a single client.
Wow.
I know. That was a bit sort of like, well, in fact, I put them up by 50% because it went up by to that. So it was, I would put them up by 50%, didn't lose a single client. So that was the one lesson. Another lesson was looking at the fact that you can't really, it's good to know what other people are doing, but you can't compare yourself to them. They're not you. So at one point I was told nobody would pay over a certain amount per hour. That's absolutely not true, because mine is more than that, and that's not a problem. It's about what you deliver and what you actually deliver, and the value that you bring. That's what people care about, and your reliability and your ability to do things in tight timescales and things like that. That's what they bring. But there was one lesson that I really did learn. Nobody is paying me by the hour, and anyone who tries to tell you that they are, that's not right. What they're actually paying me for is not my time. They're paying me for my knowledge, skills, and experience. And that's been gained over many, many, many years. They're not, my ability to look at something and go, it's this, this, and this. You're not paying me for the 15 minutes it tells me to do that. It takes me to do that. You're paying me for the 30 years that got me to the point of knowing that. This
is wonderful reframing. I really like that. It's really interesting, that idea of not charging for the time. And it reminds me of that, it's like a little anecdote story about Picasso, who drew something on a napkin in a cafe or something like this. And a woman just wanted to take this. And he said something like 2,000, whatever the currency was at the time. She goes, it took you 5 minutes to create this. He said, no, ma'am, it took me 20 years to actually get to this point. This is so interesting.
Exactly that. Yeah, very much so. And it's true. That's why people, if you're in the business that I am in, of supporting others to grow, then what people are paying you for is your knowledge and experience of how to do that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, Melanie, final question. Thank you so much for all the practical and mindset tips. Very, very helpful and interesting, and some really fresh and interesting ideas. So any final thoughts on someone who wants to get into the business of helping other businesses to grow? Any perhaps mindset tips or any suggestions on how to start and how to have that courage? I think firstly, it takes a particular type of person, because you're very much, you have to care. I know that people can divorce the two. I've never been able to do that. So for me to do what I do really well, I have to care about you and your business. And if I don't, I probably won't do it as well. It will be more mechanistic, shall I say, than anything else. I could teach you the techniques and tools and things to do and tell you what to do, but it won't be the same. So I think that's one thing. I think you need to know what your differentiator is, what actually makes you different from the rest, and be clear on that. So, for me, it's my breadth and my depth. I can work across any area of your business, but more to the point, I can join them all back together again. So one of the analogies I use is there are amazing HR consultants out there, but if you go to an HR consultant with an issue, the answer will always be HR. If you go to an IT person with an issue, the answer will always be technology. Yeah. You need someone who pulls them together. So actually, that's what my differentiator is. I see the whole picture, not just the component parts, and I know how they all work together to deliver what you need, and therefore I can help you to work your way through that and understand it. So know what your differentiator is. I also know mine is about building confidence. People, I don't know why, but people tell me all the time that I build their confidence, probably because I just believe they can. In fact, I have little badges that I give out to only to my female clients, sorry, to my male clients, but you don't really need them, which say she believes she could, so she did. Nice. Yeah, I know. Just to remind them, when they have those days in that respect. And I think when you're going into it, it's being realistic about what you offer.
as well. I've seen several people try and do this, and the reason why they're not successful is they don't actually have the right level of experience and expertise to do it. If we're honest about it, they need more experience and expertise of working in other people's businesses before they can actually advise someone else on theirs. And I do think that's really, really important. You have to have seen a lot. The clients I work with, they want real life examples of organizations that are like them, not big global giants. So we can all come up with a big global giant, case studies, can't we? They're all out there, Harvard Business School do them, all the universities do them. We can all find those. But they want real life examples of, a gardener who did this, or, a hairdresser who did that, or an IT services company that did this, or a plastic widget manufacturer that did that. They want the actual real life examples rather than ones that they can relate to, rather than big company ones. And you can only get that by having a lot of experience. So I also say, a lot of experience is important. And belief in yourself, it's going to be tough. There are going to be days when you sit there. I have my best friend reminds me that I'm not allowed to say this anymore. I used to say, it's falling off a cliff, I've got no more work. He says, Melanie, you've been saying that for the last 10 years, and every year on year, you have your best year ever. I'm not listening to it anymore. He said, you're very resourceful. You already have a lot of business development in the pipeline. You just, sometimes in yourself, you lack the confidence to believe that it will happen. And it's taken me a long time to get to that point where I stopped saying that. Long time. So you've got to be really resilient as well, I would say. But above all, if you ask me what my real tip is, be interested in people, be really, really interested in people, because until you are, and their businesses, it won't work in what I do. I couldn't do it if I wasn't genuinely interested in people and their businesses.
How wonderful, Melanie. Thank you so much for fantastic tips, for sharing your journey, and just being so honest and open about your experience. Thank you. It's been such a wonderful 40 minutes spent chatting with you. Thank you for coming down and talking to us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.